foolish things that people do. And then he asks himself, well, what caused those things? What caused this disaster? And then he says, let me focus on not doing that. And so if you think about this as a takeaway for any investor, think about the ways in which most of us mess up as investors. We're impatient. We try to time the market. We speculate on things that we don't really understand. We trade in and out. We're much too emotional. We get caught up in fads. And here you have Charlie and Warren basically just avoiding all of those standard stupidities. And it's, as Charlie says, it's actually easier to avoid being stupid than to be smart. And so I thought that was a wonderful paradox, that you have the smartest guy alive just trying to be systematically less stupid.
William, I want to follow up on that point. You know, when Charlie and Warren talk, it sounds so easy. And you listen to it and you go, yep, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And then you try to do it and you can't do it. Why is there this gap?
Yeah, Charlie always says about investing, it's simple, not easy. And I think one of the things you have to understand, you have to start by saying, well, there are these inviolable principles that I need to understand about how investing works. Like, for example, you want to be patient. You want to buy assets when they're worth considerably more than the market thinks they're worth. So there's a margin of safety there, and then wait. But think about the difficulty of actually buying things that are unpopular, that everyone else thinks are undervalued, that everyone else thinks are actually cheap because they deserve to be cheap. So I think there's a tremendous psychological pressure. And when I look at Charlie and Warren, I think one of their greatest advantages is actually that they're just entirely unemotional. And so they're not really sucked up by the emotions of the crowd. And when I went to interview Charlie, I said to him, during the market crash in 2009, when you were buying things like Wells Fargo, the bottom tick of the crash in March 2009, did you feel these emotions like fear, anxiety, worry? And he said, no, I just didn't feel them at all. And I said, does Warren feel it? And he said, no, he's wired exactly the same way. And so I think there's a tremendous temperamental advantage that they have, which is that because they don't really feel these emotions, they can step back and just be hyper rational. And so if you look at a period like this where everyone is saying, I can't believe they have $145 billion in cash and they're not doing anything. Why don't they do something? They're just sublimely indifferent to those cries from the crowd. And Warren just says, we're not paid for activity, we're paid for being right.
And yet, to Andy's point, easier said than done, to break away from all the noise that's out there. The guiding principles when you think about Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, extreme patience and selectiveness, which you just kind of alluded to. How do investors who are watching at home apply that, though, to their portfolio?
Yeah. Charlie has this beautiful image that I take very seriously, which he says you should be like a spear fisherman. So you should be standing by the side of the stream most of the time doing absolutely nothing. And then he says once in a while a fat juicy salmon swims by and you spear it and then you just go back to doing nothing. And he said, but it may be that for the next 6 months nothing comes along. And so I think one of the great takeaways for regular investors is that the market doesn't always offer you tremendous opportunity. And so if risk is being priced in a way that's not particularly attractive, which is probably generally speaking the case at the moment, you want to tread with extreme caution. And then at these moments where suddenly the bipolar market goes the other direction, is going nuts, and is presenting you with lots of fat, juicy salmons, that's when you want to really strike with what Charlie calls gumption. And so in a way, what you're trying to do is set yourself up counterculturally. So while everyone else is hyperactive and they're saying, I must do something because look, Bitcoin's surging and Tesla is surging, I must act. Here are Charlie and Warren just acting calmly like spear fishermen, just waiting by the stream, happy to do absolutely nothing, just fish and twiddle their thumbs. And they've actually set their lives up in a way that I describe as heroically inactive. They're playing bridge, they're reading for hours a day, they're fishing, they're golfing, they're chatting with friends, and just reading tons of annual reports and tons of biographies. And so I think you want to actually try to structure your life in a way that enables you to be much more patient, so that you're not getting sucked into the hyperactivity of the market.
I like that image that you just put out there, William, about two fishermen spearfishing on the side of the river. But you talk about the two of them together. How important is that partnership, do you think? And Julia LaRoche was talking about them being reunited this year. But how important is that to achieve investing results, to have someone to bounce something off of like that?
I think it's been
เดี๋ยวนายฮันเตอร์ต้อง4-5
talks about hanging out with the eminent dead as one of the ways that you learn. And one of the eminent dead that he hangs out with is Darwin. And he says that what he learned from Darwin is that Darwin was always seeking disconfirming evidence. He wasn't trying to support his religious views with his investigations into evolution. He was actually trying to destroy his own most cherished beliefs, in a sense. And I think part of what this relationship between Charlie and Warren enables them to do is to test each other's beliefs. And so Warren famously has described Charlie as the abominable no-man. And I think to have this mechanism, this structure where somebody is challenging your beliefs and is smart enough to be able to challenge you, I think that's hugely powerful. But I think for most of us, we're not going to have that opportunity, but we can still be constantly and consciously searching for disconfirming evidence. And it may be something as simple as if you're politically liberal, you read the Wall Street Journal op-ed page, and if you're politically conservative, you read the New York Times op-ed page. And this is something that Charlie very consciously does. And I think it's interesting that you have Warren as a Democrat, Charlie as a Republican, and they've had this kind of wonderful relationship where they're actually seeking out views that are different from their own. And then at the same time, I think treating each other with tremendous decency and kindness. And I think that's something that we're all excited about for today. It's that it's in a sense the reunion of this odd couple. And on the occasions that I've been to Omaha for the Berkshire meeting, one of the most joyous and memorable things is just that it's almost like a comedy act. You're watching these. It's as if you're watching Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon wisecracking together. And I think there's something really wonderful about that partnership between them, and then the fact that they also treat their shareholders as partners. So there's an old-fashioned sense of honor and decency and transparency and humor that I think is one of the reasons why we've all been coming back year after year, and why we're all happy to see Charlie back this year after being absent last year.
William Green, author of Richer, Wiser, and Happier, thanks so much for coming on. I should mention that Warren Buffett has just come into the room. They're doing some tests here. We're just about a half an hour away from the beginning of the annual meeting. In the meantime, I want to talk about chocolate. It is the ultimate comfort food. During the pandemic, sales of chocolate were way up. Overall candy sales hit a record $44 billion last year. That's great for See's Candies and for Berkshire shareholders. The CEO of See's, Pat Egan, joins us next here.
Well, I'm pleased to bring to you all this conversation with one of our very favorite booths at the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting. That is See's Candy and its CEO, Pat Egan. See's, it's celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. Pat, so great to have you join us. Of course, we wish we could be in person, but great nonetheless.
Wish I could be there too, Julie, and thanks for the opportunity. We're looking forward to hopefully next year coming back, but as I said, Omaha is always a big deal for us, so we're going to miss it, but hopefully we're back there next year.
Yeah, I certainly hope we're back next year. And of course, you know, we're so used to seeing tons of candy at that booth in Omaha. And I think a lot of folks are interested, Pat, like how has business been for you all in the last year?
Well, I like to say the last year has been the longest decade of my life. We've been through a lot. Last year, it's a tale of a couple of different quarters. So the first quarter was tremendous. We started off really hot at the beginning of 2020, and we ended pretty good. The second and third quarters, we essentially, in the middle of March, when this first really hit, we shut down all of our stores in the span of 5 days. So about 245 stores we closed in a matter of days. And then about a week and a half later, we closed our e-commerce fulfillment center down in Southern California. So for a period of time there, we essentially completely stopped. And the reason for it was we operate and are headquartered in the Bay Area, and that was one of the first orders that was issued nationally. And so we respected and stopped, and then we went through all of the states that were successively that week actually shutting down. So from that point forward, what we did was we just said, we're not going to reopen stores or reopen our plants until we can create a safe operating environment for all of our employees. That took a while, and by the time we restored at the end of the summer, we saw customers coming back in, but for that period of time, it was pretty rough.
So how about right now? How are things for you all? How are your store reopenings?
Yeah.
Are you still? I suppose you're probably doing a lot of business online. I know around Valentine's Day, I was looking on your website to order some candies for some of the special folks in my life. So how are things now?
Well, thank you for your business, Julie. It's great. We actually, we're fully back, I believe. We've had our best January ever, our best February ever. We just completed our best first quarter ever. And as you mentioned, e-commerce, yeah, we had a great growth last year. We grew about 70% just on total packages shipped. And what you might expect would be that when the stores reopened, that would trail off a little bit. It hasn't. Our first quarter, we were up almost 60% over the first quarter of last year. So what we've seen is the traffic coming back into stores, and it's been gradual, but we're almost back to 100%. But our e-commerce, which has more than doubled, has actually stayed at that level, and we're just fine with it not coming back to earth. It creates some different operational challenges, but we've definitely expanded our customer base.
You know, one of the things that's really interesting about See's, it's a 100-year-old company, and one of the things I know that you've talked about in the past is the customer service in the stores. And Pat, you come from an energy background, and the last time we talked to you was at the annual meeting in 2019. You were just a few days on the job, now a couple of years on the job. So coming into retail, what has been some of the biggest biggest learnings in your role?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. As you mentioned, our focus on customer service. I feel so fortunate. I feel myself part of this business. Our products are tremendous, and our customer service.
Gue juga nggak tahu, Mbak, malah
want
salah.
to make sure that when customers come into our store, that they leave with a smile and that they're happier than when they started. I like to say we sell joy. So my background in energy is a little different, no doubt about it, but I learned so many good lessons there that I hope have served us well here, and that is that it's not easy to make an energy customer happy all the time. When you're interacting with them, it's usually about a bill or you've had an outage. And of course, we try to make both of those things as minimal as possible, but I really worked very hard with a great team there to focus on what does the customer need. And I will say, that is the Berkshire way, and that's part of what I'm proud about. And I can see the transition from energy into candy. The common thread is that we take care of our customers, and See's has done it for a century now and done it tremendously well.
Mm-hmm. You know, it is interesting, just Warren Buffett's management style, the very hands-off management style for the various portfolio companies. But I imagine when we think about Buffett, and he often talks about wanting to be remembered as a teacher, what's been the most important lesson you've learned from Warren?
Integrity. I regularly review his quotes. He's you're right, he's hands off, but he's very efficient and very effective in conveying the message, which is do the right thing, take care of the customer, and take care of your employees, and the results will follow. And I had the great fortune of working with Greg Abel in the energy business, and he is very much a devotee of that. And so just living up to that and making sure that we follow through on those principles is, first and foremost. And as a teacher, he leads by example all the time. He's very focused on getting the right outcomes, certainly for our customers. I think he's a great citizen of the country and the world, and a great leader in that regard. But, kind of boiling it down to the simple, what are the results and how are you getting there without getting too cute about things, and making sure you're focused on the right things.
Well, Pat Egan, CEO of See's Candies, I thank you so much for joining us ahead of the shareholders meeting, and hopefully see you in Omaha in 2022. Thank you again.
I look forward to it, Julie. Thank you very much.
And we hear that in addition to that iconic peanut brittle, Warren and Charlie will have See's Candies' newest product, chocolate-covered coffee beans. Well, up next, Berkshire Hathaway Director Ron Olson joins Andy Serwer with his preview of the big annual meeting. Stay with us.
Hello, welcome back to the Berkshire Hathaway Annual Shareholders Meeting 2021. I'm Andy Serwer, and I'm here with Ron Olson, who is a Berkshire Hathaway director and also partner with Munger, Tolles & Olson. Ron, great to see you.
Andy, great to see you. Great to see you in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Ron.
My recollection is we usually encounter each other on an airplane headed to Omaha at this time of year.
That's right. Things are very different. So let's jump off of that point, Ron. What are you looking for this year that's different from prior years? We have the different geography for sure.
Well, let me tell you what I'm looking for that is the same, and that's the Charlie and Warren show. To me, it's irreplaceable, and it is the delight and most meaningful part of the meeting. In addition, it's nice to have an excuse to be in Omaha. I mean, being Los Angeles, I also look forward to returning to Omaha next year. And having all the managers around and all the fun that we do, these virtual things are a good substitute, but not as much fun.
Right. So this year is a bit of a hybrid. No shareholders, but we do have
Well, a
the
few of us
directors.
are shareholders.
Right, that's true. The directors are shareholders. But basically, this room right here is going to have the directors in it. And you can see the stage, as it were, is up there where Warren and Charlie, and I can see Greg Abel's already up there.
Greg is there, and Ajit will be there, and Warren and Charlie. And, you know, they've got a bank of cameras in front of them, and there's a place where Becky Quick's going to be sitting off screen probably. But, you know, it's I think, worked out very, very well.
Right. And the company just announced results this morning, Ron. What do you make of those, and how's the business going?
Well, up is the big companies that Warren features in his letter each year. You know, energy company and insurance businesses and so on. I mean, they're doing sensational, just sensational, and we have every reason to believe that climb is going to continue. Now, by and large, insurance throughout the pandemic period has done very, very well, and so did the energy business and BNSF. They held up very well. Some of the retail businesses they were very seriously hurt during the pandemic, and those that had a lot invested in the mall access, I think particularly so. And so those are climbing, but not, they're not out of the hole. It's going to be a long haul, I think, for some of the businesses. But by and large, I'm very, very pleased with what we're doing.
What is it like being a director of Berkshire Hathaway? How often do you talk? How often does Warren Buffett talk to you guys? And what is the communication like? What's it like behind the scenes?
Well, we have basically 2 big in-person meetings a year, and then a number of other director meetings during the course of the year, often depending upon particular circumstances, an acquisition or something like that. In addition to that, I think Warren's a communicator. Charlie's a communicator. And of course, with Charlie, he's in Los Angeles, and he and I talk often. Warren and I tend to talk on Sundays, and he does that with other directors throughout the year. He's on the phone with the managers all the time. So there's a lot of communication in this company. Communication up, communication down, a lot of transparency.
Sundays, huh? It sounds like you're working 7 days a week here.
Yeah, anytime you're talking to Warren, you're having fun.
Right. You got, we talked about Ajit Jain and Greg Abel up there on the stage, and I have to ask you about succession. People always ask that, but is there anything that we need to know in that department?
Well, you haven't missed that succession question, as I remembered, about the last 4 years with me. People talk about succession planning, and I think you could look at the fact that we have 2 new vice chairmen in the last few years with expanded responsibilities. Ajit throughout the insurance businesses, and Greg throughout the non-insurance businesses. You could look on that as succession planning. You could look on our 2 great investors that have been brought in, Ted and Todd, as succession planning. Me, I like to describe it as management extension. There's no question that the activities of Greg and Ajit, the 2 T's, have given new, in my opinion, new opportunities for Warren and Charlie to continue doing what they do so well. And, Greg does a lot more traveling than Warren does these days to the respective businesses. Now, if you ask Warren any question about any of the businesses, he's got it on the tip of his tongue, reading all the time. But in terms of, showing up for the celebration of the 10th anniversary of the CEO or something. Greg is more often going to be there, although I know Warren, we lost a great one of our managers, Paul Andrews, for TTI just in the last few weeks, and I know Warren was at that funeral with Greg. But it is, in my mind, why would we want to throw away the lifetime of experience these two guys have had and bring to bear on every important judgment this company makes? So there's no replacement timetable. Every meeting, we directors talk about succession. If something happened tomorrow, we know exactly what we're going to do, but that's about as far as I go with this question. Okay. And I would say this, that, look at how, in addition to the two vice chairs, the way this company operates, it's created management that have had the experience of being their own business bosses.
Right.
And so it's a great way to grow talent, in my opinion, as well as to grow the company.
Quick last question, Ron. Anything that we should know about the shareholder proposals that are being put forth today?
I don't think anything that isn't in our proxy. I'm confident that our shareholders are going to back our recommendations. But there's all of that is being presented. You take climate change. We take that seriously. And you look at what the utilities are doing, you look at what BNSF are doing. We got lots of examples out there of us becoming more efficient, adding, I think, to the strength of our companies. And I think they will be defeated, but that's for us to find out later today.
Ron Olson, Berkshire Hathaway Director, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andy.
Yahoo Finance's